Good morning, hello everybody, and welcome to this absolutely gorgeous day. We're in June, June, and today's video, what I want to talk about today is there ever such a thing as too much power? So I need you to get in the comments on this one. I need you to join in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take blade out, which is 75 brake horsepower bike, and we'll discuss if there's ever such a thing as too much power. Certainly you can have not enough, but can you have too much? So what we'll do, join me on blade and we'll talk about it, and then I want you to answer in the comments as well what you think, and so on and so forth. So see you on blade. Well, you join me on blade for the discussion that it's been prompted by YouTube. Seen a lot of people putting things on there, and the question I'm asking you guys: is it possible to have too much power in your motorcycle? So I've seen a lot of people doing reviews on smaller machines, as in smaller capacity, not necessarily smaller actual bikes. Some of the popular ones seem to be the Honda 500, it might be an NC 500 and the NC 700, and the 500's got about 40 something brake horsepower, so that's for first bike compliant. And the 700 is supposed to be the best bike you can have and own. So what they're saying is you don't need 100 plus horsepower. You're quite able to be happy in about 70 brake on and under. So the first thing is, and one of the things they are saying is, it's the only bike you need. Well, I'm sorry, that's just not possible. I don't think in this world that we live in at the moment any one bike covers all bases, and I don't think any one bike comes even close to covering all bases. I personally think in your army of machinery you're about needing 4. I will explain. So if you are the sort of person that commutes to work and on a regular basis in all weathers, you need a bike that will do that. And for me, possibly we might be looking at a scooter. No chain, you get 250 scooters, things like that. If you passed your test and you want a little bit more power, unless your commute's just in town, then a 125 will do absolutely fine. So something you could jump on a shitty day and put your waterproofs on, get yourself to work, park it up, lock it up, and go and do your job. Bike number 1, if that's what you need. You're not going to want to be taking your lovely GS, your pristine GS, to work every day. Some people do, I know, but maybe that's not something you want to do, especially if you've got to leave it somewhere a little bit precarious. So bike number 1, something to commute. The choice is yours. Now, a lot of us riders at the moment seem to be going on these green lanes. I've done a little bit of it by borrowing a machine from a friend, and absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. So you probably want a trailer bike, something light, plastic fairings, so if you fall off it don't matter. So maybe a single potter or maybe a twin, something that takes your fancy, but something you can get on the road. I mean, do sort of, the one I rode I think was sort of happy around 50 mile an hour, so you don't want to be spending too long on open roads on it. So, and then go green laning. Okay, bike number 2 then. So bike number 3, something sporty, something that takes you out yourself, something that gives you that buzz when you take it out. something like this. Now I'm not talking about too much power, as in you know, something that's radical, like a new sports bike that's totally radical and track tuned. We're not talking about that. We're just talking, you know, 1000cc that's got between 120 and 170 brake, maybe. So I'm digressing a bit here. So yeah, so a sports bike, something that you can take out for an hour and go for a proper smiley ride on. And then what about if you're a tourer? You like you're doing your tours, well, you need a touring bike for that, which could be a sports tourer, or it could be an adventure. Now maybe if you've got a sports bike, maybe the adventure would be better for you. So for me, I think a lot of the cases that they're putting forward is because the bikes are lighter. For older generation, as we get older, we've done the sports bike side, we've done the big GS. I mean, I must admit, I do find the GS a very, very heavy bike, and when I see what some guys can do on them, you know, I'm blown away. You start taking them off-road and dirt tracking on them and everything, well, credit to them. But that's like the people who seriously buy a Land Rover or a Range Rover and then go off-roading on it. There's always going to be that type of person. So, okay. A wise man once said to me, the bike is only as quick as that. That's it. So I don't like modern sports bikes because they've got too much tech on them and they're too radical, and I've discussed before, you sit in on them instead of in them, whereas this to sit in it. So for me, the modern sports bike is a no-no. However, I have got the Suzuki GT, which is 1000cc and 150 brake horsepower, and I've never felt at any time that that bike was too heavy. Again, it's a bike you sit in, not on, so I've never found it too heavy. And I've certainly never felt that it's got too much power, because obviously it just depends on how you twist your wrist. So my argument is that there is no bike that's got too much power. However, I did have a 650 Deauville that used to be my dad's, and when he passed away I took ownership of it, and I found that as a winter bike very engaging. You know, it's 650cc, 47 brake horsepower, which most of them had left it anyway. It done nearly 100,000 miles, that bike. So I found that to be very engaging to ride. You had to be up and down the gearbox all the time. However, if I was to do a tour abroad on it, I'd find that very tiresome. Every time I wanted to overtake something, I'd have to drop a cog or two. And people called them Deauvilles, and they were far, it was far from it. It was a Honda, and it did exactly what it said on the tin. It handled beautifully, and for a bike with nearly 100,000 miles on it, I was very impressed with it. So having a smaller bike is very engaging and very enjoyable to ride, but that can become tedious. Whereas a bigger bike, you can be just as engaging, or as, alright, you might be going a little bit quicker, or you can relax on it. For me, I found the Deauville very engaging. However, I did find it a bit tedious sometimes. Case in point with the cameras. So back to the question, is it possible to have too much power? Now these guys are saying you don't need all this power, 40cc is enough. Now I would agree if you are a solo rider and that's all you do, you know, and if there's one guy who's taking it well, I think he did the North Coast 500, where it's called, up Scotland. And he had his tent on it and his luggage and bits and bobs, and as a solo rider that could be absolutely fine. If you're a 2-up rider, I don't think that's going to work at all. Now the 700 I would go along with. Oh dear, it's not going to work, is it? Not unless you're going to come backwards. The 700's got a bit more power to it, and this is what I would compare it to. The B-Strom 650 that I took out, I absolutely adored that bike, and I never once thought it was lacking in power on the ride that I took it on. I took it on a 160 mile ride, I think it was, and at no point did I think that it was lacking. Which was all country lanes and nice twisters, and you know, and I would totally, absolutely 100% agree that that was enough power. Unless you got in a bit of a sticky situation and you just want to wind it on and you're hoping it's going to go, and then it's not, is it? And again, on that bike I was solo, so to make it a good 2-up bike, you're back up to the 1050 B-Strom, and you're back up to your 1000 cc's and 120 brake. To which, to be fair, I did find its limits. And I think that's the key. I think I'd rather have a machine that I'm not finding the limits on. I would rather have a machine that has got plenty in store. I like the fact that this bike is way better than I'll ever be. So pretty much whatever circumstance it ends up in, the bike can do it. I'm not saying I can, but the bike definitely can. So under me at the moment is over 170 brake horsepower, and at no point is it finding it intimidating at all. I'm riding it to my capabilities. So my argument stands that you cannot have too much power. You don't have to use it, but you can't have too much. I mean, we're now in the realms of Ducatis and BMWs running at over 200 brake horsepower. You're probably not going to ever use that on the road. In fact, I don't think you'd be able to, for the simple fact is you're going to lose your license. But again, you can have it and not use it. Now let's go back to older generation picking light bikes. You know, well, this is light, nothing heavy about this. But I go with the argument that, you know, it's heavy on your wrists and things like that. So I accept that. However, Motor Guzzi have brought out 850 TT, I think it's called. It's 230 kilos. It's a 850cc, 79 brake horsepower, absolutely gorgeous looking bike. Typical Italian beautifulness. And I will go along with that. It is absolutely stunning. That is what can only be described as pretty. Alfa Romeo of, well, they say Ducatis Ferrari, don't they, of motorbikes. So Motor Guzzi must be Alfa Romeo. It must be. Beautiful Italian styling. I've watched a couple of videos on it, and yeah, oh, beautiful. But heavy. So what market are they looking at? And they put it up against the BMW and the KTM. Well, I think KTM's going to struggle now. I mean, they've never been the most reliable bike. And now that they're in trouble, I don't know who's going to be wanting to go out and spend the money on a KTM. I did it when Rover went bust. I bought a brand new Rover, or MG, and yeah, ended up sat there after 8 months with no warranty, which wasn't nice. Anyway, I digress. So, would you think, well, okay, the Motor Guzzi's only got 79 brake horsepower, that's more than enough, but then end up with a very heavy bike, which I thought the idea was, as you get older and struggling to move the bikes around, you're going to want something lighter. So the debate carries on, and the answer for me, there isn't one. There's my just personal opinion, and my personal opinion is I wouldn't buy a GS for the simple reason that I'd find that too heavy, whereas the GT I find very manageable. Would I entertain one of the other adventure bikes? Probably not. And yeah, I do like the idea of an adventure bike, I really do. And I think, again, if I was going to have an adventure bike, I would probably go down Suzuki's route. They brought the new Hornet out, 1000cc, 150 brake horsepower. The bike's doing absolutely fantastic, but nobody's going to be using that on the road. Not if they're going to keep the license, they're not anyway. But they're selling. But the thing is, you're getting 1000cc, you're getting 150 brake horsepower, but what they're not telling you about is you're getting the torque to leave it in top gear and just roll past whatever you want to overtake. Nice easy riding, and yes, you still can hustle it. So the guys that are doing these videos and saying, you know, you should, you don't need all this power, I do agree with, but I also agree to disagree, because you know, on that day when you just want to get that bit of excitement, and that's the one thing they do lack, they lack that excitement. They lack that. This bike is way better than me. I mean, we went to a bike meet, or not bike meet, but a bike cafe, and we parked next to a guy on a Royal Enfield. It was the, I can't remember, 500cc Royal Enfield, something like that, 650, can't remember. Anyway, we parked next to this guy on this Royal Enfield, and when we came out from after our breakfast, he was looking all over our bike. Nothing unusual there, you know, apart from the fact he's on a Royal Enfield, so I assumed, probably incorrectly, that this man actually likes older style bikes. And he then got chatting, and it turned out he'd had one of these when they first came out 20 years ago. Absolutely loved it, wished he hadn't sold it. And I said, why then have you got one in the garage somewhere? No, this is my only bike. I said, but if you've gone from something like this that you obviously enjoyed owning, what made you go for the Royal Enfield? And he went, well, two things, rightly or wrongly. One, I could afford to buy it brand new. I get that. Yeah, nobody else has ridden it, it's a brand new bike, so I understand that completely. He said, and two, because I'm an older gentleman, I thought it's the way I should go. So somewhere along the line, oh well, it's something there. Wow, it's been a bit of a fire there by the looks of it. So somewhere along the line, somebody has put into his mind, or something has put into his mind, that he should be looking at that sort of machine at his age. And like I said to him, I said, I understand that, and I do get it, because I kind of went down that road myself. However, I've come out of it again, and I've gone back to wanting to ride what I want to ride and what I enjoy riding. And he turned around and he went, do you know what? He said, I wished I'd had the hindsight. He said, because he's had the bike about a year, he's thought about changing his bike and it's worthless. The bike is actually not worth just over a third, I think he said, of what he paid for it, because of what it is. And I said, like I said, we discussed it, and I said, look, that's the thing, when you're buying something cheap for a cheap price, it's only ever going to be cheap. So he's had it a year, he's done about 4,500 miles on it, and they're offering him a third of what he paid for it, because the second-hand market in them is dead, solely because the price of them brand new, people are just buying a new one. I think that's the day and age we live in, where people buy things monthly. You know, you can buy a second-hand one, a year old, or for a tenner a month extra you can have a brand new one. And I think maybe that's what people do. I'm not sure. But anyway, I digress. So, can you have too much power? No. You can have enough, I think, but you can certainly have not enough, and you can certainly have a bike that you find the limitations on really, really quickly, and that is not a good thing. And I feel that's where, you know, I would be if I bought the Honda 500. Definitely I would be on a situation where I would find its limitations too quick. I'm not saying it won't hold the road, because I'm sure it will. I'm not sure you can't have fun on it around the twisters, because I'm sure you can. However, if you happen to be in the wrong gear coming out of a bend, that bike's going to give you nothing. It's not going to give you a thing, is it? Oh, it's so peaceful up here. Funnily enough, we were here last night. We came down in the car and brought a dog. Had a walk across there and had a Coke in the pub, and I don't know how far it goes that way. It goes down quite a way, and then you go into a farmer's field, so I think there's quite a good walk down that way. That way heads to Newark, so that's, yeah, that way go to River Trent to Newark. And how beautiful. So as we were talking about too much power, the other thing that I didn't hit on, which I should have done, is what about, if you excuse my fan going off, what about aesthetics? If you're the sort of person that goes to a bike meet and enjoys, you know, people are looking at your bike going, wow, that's lovely, or, you know, what a nice bike you've got. If you're that sort of person, I don't think these bikes they're talking about, because nobody would pay any attention to it. Nobody's going to pay any attention to a Honda 500, unless you're maybe a 17-year-old, 18-year-old getting off of it. I don't know if they're allowed to ride them or not, but I know you've got, once you pass your test, you're only allowed so much brake horsepower up to a certain age. Don't know the law. So would you be that sort of person? Like I take Blade, we go to anywhere that we park up, there's other bikes, and she gets so much attention. GT doesn't. The only time the GT gets any attention is when people realise that it's a newer model, so they'll look at it and go, oh, isn't that? Yet Blade just ends up with a crowd around her. You know, she's a stunning looking bike, don't get me wrong. And you know, it's like, oh, a Fireblade, oh, dangerous, oh, they're not. She's so placid. You can ride her so gently if you want to. You don't have to do any heroics, and she will do it. She will happily do it. Like today, I've come out, and I'm here. And it's so beautiful here. Let me show you. Let me pick this lid up. We'll start off with a nice view, which is not a nice view with that sat on the seat, is it? Should really just chuck them on the floor, but I'm sure the wind will sort that out for me. So look at that. Absolutely stunning. Let's take you for a walk. What you need now is a nice cruiser boat coming by, and that would just about finish it off. So nice and tranquil, and well, there's some boats down there. Probably won't be able to pick those up, but they are there. And then the countryside just goes on and on and on and on and on. How beautiful. You see that water glistening? No. Too much power? No. Don't agree with that at all. Not enough power, yes. Like I said, I think on the 500, the 700, the 650 V-Strom and the 800 V-Strom both found the limits very, very, very easily. There's a lot of this twin cylinder stuff going off as well. Everybody's like, oh, inline twins this, inline twins that, taking over from 4 cylinders. I'm not a twin man. I like my 4 cylinders. So, like, I had a GSXR 600. I didn't find the limits of that. I didn't take it on track, but I never found the limits of it. The Blade, I certainly will never find the limits of. However, 2 up, and it's an absolute hoot to ride. And again, because I'm 2 up, it's a nice, smooth, gentle ride. Now, modern bikes, modern sports bikes, have got so much tech on them, I find them very difficult to give a smooth ride on. Even the GT, sometimes I find that quite hard to give a smooth ride on. It's not because it's got 150 brake horsepower, it's because of the EU regulations on emissions. They've got to do what they've got to do to try and hold it back. And what everybody says, you get your new bike, first thing you do is exhaust front to back and then go and have it remapped. And you end up with a 2005 variation of a bike. I still don't know where the law stands on that. You know, when you start taking it for MOTs and things like that, because the cat's gone and everything's disappeared, I'm not 100% sure. Do keep looking into it. MOT stations are a bit vague at the minute. What they're basically saying is, as long as the exhaust isn't too loud to them, they can pass it. But I don't know what the actual law is. So any of you guys know, then yeah, please come and tell us. So I think what I'm going to do is go and enjoy my 1000cc 170 brake horsepower motorbike that I do believe has not got too much power, and go find a coffee somewhere. I think find a nice coffee.